This video is sponsored by Bai. American McGee's Alice games have been on my radar for years. I was hypnotised by their unique style and strong art design, so I finally played both the original Alice game and Madness Returns. It's not too common that I know I want to cover a game without having played it first, but the captivating charm of this whimsical, gothic, virtual world was too hard to resist. McGee's take on Lewis Carroll's classic envisioned a much more sinister and twisted Wonderland than Disney's 1951 animation, but one that still relied heavily on its source material. Dark adaptations of Alice, whether intentional or not, aren't that few in number, and the original text has some disturbing moments that have you questioning if this really is a children's book. The Queen of Hearts has a troubling obsession with decapitation, after all. In an interview with game developer, McGee admits that making his version of Alice wasn't a result of him forcing that darkness on the story. It just seemed to come out naturally out of Carroll's writing when he read it. Just like the original literature, Alice's Wonderland resides entirely within her mind, constructing itself around places and characters she has come across in the real world. In the Alice Madness Returns design document, Wonderland is described as a mad landscape, composed of the impressionistic representations of all the events and characters that have passed through Alice's waking life. It is in Wonderland that Alice is able to examine events that are too muddied by time, or too painful to approach in reality. This exploration of a muddled subconscious realm is at the heart and observation of the surreal, and it's exactly this concept that so easily tips Alice in Wonderland into dark and unsettling territory. Surrealism can be an incredibly effective tool for horror in art, as it turns intangible thoughts, feelings, and memories into something that can be perceived. The emotions and meanings of surrealist work can be difficult to feel and understand, often leaving the viewer confused and disturbed, especially when they look at it too literally. But ultimately, that's what makes it so powerful, that regardless of whether or not you can decipher what's going on, you still feel something. It speaks directly to your subconscious. In Anthony Darrington's article examining surrealism in the horror genre, he says that
surrealism in art is unextractable. When it comes to the horror genre specifically, its form is often a vehicle used to show our own ugliness. The ugliness of our dreams, our nightmares, our thoughts, and our image. It evokes the purest form of fear, that being an irrational one.
The original illustrator of Carroll's books was John Tenniel, whose work set the foundations for many adaptations to come, including McGee's. But there have also been many artists who have painted their own versions of Alice's tale, including Peter Blake and Max Ernst. Even one of surrealism's major figures, Salvador Dali, created illustrations for a limited edition of Alice's Adventures in Wonderland in 1969. The psychedelic nature of Alice's journey into Wonderland evokes a sense of instability and perplexity, while still retaining a visually fascinating quality to it no matter which artist's lens you're viewing it through. But among all of them, the style of American McGee's Alice is my favourite. The general aesthetic of McGee's Alice is still very faithful to the Victorian creation, with its English gardens with shaped hedges, anthropomorphic animals in suits, and extravagant tea parties. It includes clocks, playing cards, and magical potions, all packaged within a surprisingly bright colour palette, considering the darker tones of the story and characters. A horror game with a similar tone will often dull its colour palette and lighting in order to create unease, but the Alice games show its twisted subject matter on full display. It works perfectly with the idea that her life and memories shape her mindscape, as Alice's childhood is tainted by tragedy and trauma. So it mixes toys, experiences, and places familiar to a young Victorian girl to create a surreal, macabre wonderland. One of the series' most effective visual features is its use of opposing aesthetics, as it will blend those typical recreational games and toys of that era with medical instruments and mechanical parts. You can find remnants of anatomical drawings and surgical tools embedded into places or things, likely inspired by Alice's time at Rutledge Asylum. And you'll stumble across giant cogs and clunky levers, which I assume is due in part to the Industrial Revolution in Victorian England, something which is a lot more obvious in the sequel. A doll isn't meant to be dissected with scientific intent, and a dodo doesn't come naturally with metal fixtures and wind-up parts. It's nonsensical but in a grotesque way, depicting a feeling of great suffering caused by the cold inhumanity of the extreme treatments frequently used in Victorian medicine. The anthropomorphic animals and objects are frequently spun with an element of body horror, or exaggeration of features like a caricature. There's always something off. A distorted sense of scale doesn't only inhabit the characters, but environments too, constantly shifting Alice's size and perception of the things around her. Looking at some of the first game's concept art, it seemed the art direction was clear from the very beginning. The protruding spine and sharp features of the Cheshire Cat, for example, are a stark contrast to the snuggly depictions you may have seen in the past. And it couldn't be more perfect. According to the official art book, Madness Returns had some more specific references and inspirations, including Dave McKean, Mark Ryden, and Zdzislaw Beksiński, as well as drawing from a wide variety of sources such as collector's doll props and taxidermy. From these influences, you can see the team focused on having a captivating yet gruesome quality for the game's visuals. The impact of artists such as Beksiński and MC Escher is especially noticeable in Madness Returns concept art, with entire levels or landscapes drawn with them in mind. Ultimately, certain ideas would pose too many technical problems to actually be implemented into the game, but it's impressive to see just how devoted the art team were to their vision of the surreal. It all evokes a debilitating sense of dread and confusion, yet you can't help but feel humbled by their complexity and beauty.
We sought out paintings, photography, sculptures, engravings, films both new and old, anything that could inspire creepy, nightmarish, disturbed imagery in our imaginations.
The environments of both of American McGee's Alice games follow the general aesthetic associated with Wonderland, that of woodland areas, hedge mazes, and castles. Even with the dark twist on the series, you can see the development team endeavoured to include a wide range of colours, and not leave the game's levels looking bleak and gloomy. It can be quite easy for games that tackle horror and dark subjects to fall into this visual category, so it's refreshing to see such a bright, visually pleasing game to be able to still create unsettling imagery. The first game will have you manoeuvring through fragmented Gothic architecture situated in stormy vortexes, huge libraries filled with endless books, realms of inhabitable chessboards, and disorienting hallways of mirrors. The game often alters Alice's scale. Sometimes the areas she inhabits feel proportionate to real life, but others, like treacherous forests, are explored in a shrunken body, just about as big as the insects around you. All of these areas, however, are for the most part made up of imagery that would be familiar to a young Victorian girl raised in Oxford, and you get the sense that this wonderland really is a world existing in Alice's subconscious, as parts are distorted, obscured, and twisted with one another in an illogical manner. In Madness Returns, differently themed worlds are back. However, they are much more distinct this time around in aesthetic and even colour palette. There are vibrant but deadly woods, worlds of floating clockwork and factories, as well as underwater zones followed by levels built upon visuals associated with numerous East Asian cultures. Of course, there's the typical playing cards, gardens, and castle environments later on in the game too, brought to life with great detail thanks to graphical improvements since the first game. One of my favourite areas in the game is located near the start of Chapter 4, as Alice floats down onto a path of playing cards situated among the clouds. In the distance is a structure made up of them, beckoning you to come and investigate. This place is so calm and ethereal in contrast to the majority of the game, and it allows you to take a breath to recognise the beauty in the surreal. Madness Return's largest environmental evolution is the introduction of the real world as a playable space. It's a dull-toned, harsh domain filled with unfavourable characters and considerable danger. Its filth and disarray is suffocatingly obvious, and even though the building's interiors are cosy in their own ways, there's still an oppressive air to them. And while the industrial virus spreads its pollution and dirt in the real world, Alice's inner turmoil corrupts Wonderland. Neither realm is forgiving.
Compared to Wonderland, Victorian London is a grey, desaturated place, low contrast and smoggy. All the wood is half rotten, every brick is caked in soot, and all of the streets are covered in an unspeakable filth. Our approach to London's environmental art focused on bringing out these qualities in the materials through concept art, texture, shading, and geometry. We attempted to break and sag every straight line and fill every empty space with a little debris or refuse.
The relationship between Alice's real world and that of Wonderland is even more apparent in the sequel. The areas Alice is in before being transported to Wonderland have a direct effect on the aesthetic. For example, she begins her journey in the deluded depths after spending some time at the port, and later, after setting foot in her family lawyer's distinctly East Asian-inspired home, Alice enters the similarly themed Oriental Grove level. The Alice games cover particularly dark and disturbing topics, and will often pair extremely uncomfortable imagery with connections to story elements or events happening in the real world. An observant player may pick up on these narrative links, though some might share Alice's experience with the associations only being drawn by their subconscious mind. Another one of my favourite levels in the game visually is that of the dollhouse. The influence of the artist Mark Ryden is unmistakably evident, with his signature juxtaposition of childlike innocence and gore. These otherwise violent scenes are painted in baby blues and pinks, creating its own sense of eeriness. You can also feel an Escher-esque quality as rooms move and rotate, like an ever-changing architectural puzzle. The developer notes in the official art books say that when they set out to design Wonderland, they brainstormed lots of new locations Alice could visit, themed around childhood, Victoriana, or gameplay ideas. They knew they had to have a gigantic dollhouse level in the game. A lot of the furniture in this level is bizarre and anatomical. Chairs and beds have eyes and mouths, giving an unnatural life to these objects. It's an unnerving mix to see the innocence of childhood toys combined with the sterile medical nature of human anatomy. It also depicts a cruel and sickening perception of children's bodies as parts to be used, one that is directly related to the game's storyline and its villain. It's the brightest out of all of Madness Return's levels, but it's the most disturbing in what it represents. Queensland is an area that appeared in the first game, being home to the antagonist and final boss of the playthrough. The Queen of Hearts tentacles spread across the land like a plague, swallowing the gothic buildings and green hedges. While battling this infestation, it feels like you're traversing through the enemy's innards, as it's filled with fleshy, pulsating tunnels and structures. In the sequel, Queensland is mostly reduced to a dried out husk. Only the heart of it remains plump and thriving. This blend of visceral organic material and romantic architecture creates a surreal landscape that, understandably, takes a cue from Beksinski. The Asylum level changes Alice's perception of both reality and Wonderland, with flickers and mirroring between the two worlds. We see a mess of what Alice experiences literally and subconsciously, with the aggressively clean white rooms and horrific medical instruments, as well as the exaggerated blood splatters across the floors and walls. Such imagery was inspired by the art and photography of Gottfried Hellenwein, producing a terrifying display of Alice's cruel treatments during her time in the asylum. Madness Return's final level, the Infernal Train, is an impressive showcase of Gothic grandeur. Its burning red windows and ornate architectural dressings are a sight to behold, and according to the game design document, it is the embodiment of unrestrained evil, brutality, mystery, and fear. It's a combination of Alice's fears about the powerful, unknown, uncontrollable inhumanity, of industrial strength gone mad, all matched to her own feelings of impotence and ignorance. The unknown is calculatingly cruel, discriminately vicious, and merciless. Visually, it's a fantastic idea, and although it's unfortunately quite a short-lived experience in the game, its monstrous carriages the size of cathedrals are terrifically memorable. After the final boss that occurs here, we see the collision of reality and Wonderland as Alice has conquered the threats existing in both, and so her story comes to an end. The environments in Madness Returns are brought to life not only thanks to their buildings and monuments, but also the objects that reside within them. Every mechanic is contextualized in their relative setting, with item boxes morphing from teapots in the Mad Hatter's domain to artificial cake slices in the dollhouse. Even upgrade and health points are translated into appropriate McGee's Alice imagery, with upgrade points in the form of teeth and health in the shape of rose heads. Both Alice games include weapons made from household objects and toys like chess pieces, jack-in-the-boxes, teapots, and pepper grinders. The only realistic weapon you'll receive is the iconic Vorpal blade with its ornate detailing. Just as young Alice had to adapt to her new harsh surroundings, everyday items and innocent playthings transformed into lethal weapons for her protection. She has to use the limited resources available to her in her mind to survive, so the childhood memories and motifs that would typically be sweet and wholesome are weaponized. Picking up these pieces of equipment in the sequel will prompt a poster to display on screen, as if advertising them as devices of Victorian technology, like a subtle injection of reality inside this peculiar mindscape. Upgrading them also alters their appearance. But it's not just Alice's weaponry that changes throughout her journey. As far as the style of American McGee's Alice goes, there's one more aspect I find to be important, and that's the design of Alice herself. The team opted for a blue dress and white pinafore, similar to Disney's animation, but with a number of details to set her apart. Firstly, Alice wears thigh-high steampunk boots with numerous buckles. She also sports two astrological and alchemical symbols on her front pockets. One is Eris, ruler of strife and discord, and the other is Jupiter, mind rising above the horizon of matter. Alice wears my favourite design flourish on the bow on her back, with a small skull holding it all together. We also have a necklace with the Omega symbol, which the design document explains was chosen to signify Alice herself is the end. This was represented in-game at the final boss battle, where Alice discovers that the Queen is Alice, as well as all the characters she has encountered in Wonderland. The Queen and Alice is therefore the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, and presumably everything that came in between. In the sequel, Alice is given more than just her signature blue dress. This time around, every domain she visits comes with a new look. The Mad Hatter's domain introduces the steam dress, with its frilled collar, buckled corset, and gloves. This is followed up by the siren dress with reflective scales and a shell-shaped bust. Her necklace chain is now made of seaweed, and there's a skeleton of some sort of deep ocean fish in the place of her bow, its glowing appendage still intact. Next we have the Silk Maiden dress, which is adorned by floral fabric, and the structure of the upper half resembles a kimono. The bow accessory this time is a traditional Japanese-style mask. In Queensland, Alice appears with the royal suit. That follows the theme of a playing card, accompanied with checkered detailing and gloves with edges shaped like castle walls. And finally, as far as base game outfits go, we have the misstitched dress, a patchwork outfit of different patterns and textiles. There's uneven stitches and mismatched fabrics, emulating the look of a more obviously handmade piece. The symbols displayed on the pockets of the dress will also change depending on the level. For example, the Queensland attire has Venus, representing love and the Queen of Hearts, and the South-ascending moon, symbolising the past. Whereas the siren dress worn in the Deluded Depths has the signs for Neptune and Luna, alluding to the character we meet called the Carpenter and Alice's emotions respectively. There are also DLC outfits available which are mostly based on characters we come across in Alice's adventures. I think the way the team adapted them into clothing is fantastic, and these dresses feel like high fashion concepts. I love the features of chest shoulder pieces and moving eyes embedded into flesh. It's just so impressive to me how much thought went into every thread and button of these pieces. I believe as far as video game fashion goes, Madness Returns has a stellar selection. However, these aren't the only clothes we see Alice wear. She has a completely different outfit when in the real world, of course. We see her in a dreary grayscale dress with a tattered apron. Her hair is shorter, but the silhouette remains the same as her Wonderland attire. This appearance is a stark contrast to the explosive and eccentric colour palettes and shapes of the costume she wears within her mind. While Wonderland is filled with dangers, she seems to feel a lot more empowered there, as she battles and triumphs against her inner demons. London Alice, on the other hand, is a fragile, mentally unstable Victorian girl, making her way through an equally perilous environment but without powers. It makes sense her looks and posture changes between the two realms. McGee's take on Carol's Alice has solidified itself as my favourite adaptation. Through the numerous influences of different artists specialising in surrealism, the team developed a unique flavour for their series. This originality was made possible thanks to the wide range of ideas and inspirations. Every domain gives a new visual perspective with their different palettes, architecture, and even clothing. I have a soft spot for games that cover multiple locales, each with their own distinctive aesthetic qualities, and Madness Returns especially succeeds in this aspect. The visual design choices for every part of McGee's Alice games are filled with purpose, with certain symbolic meanings or connections to the narrative. It's so inspiring to see this game's art design have every element be so thoughtfully curated. It's really no wonder so many players remember these worlds with fondness, and they still hold up over a decade later. American McGee's dedication to his series persists, as he has been working on material to propose a third entry in the series, which you can find more info on over on his channel and Patreon. It's clear that Alice means a lot to him, and given his own turbulent childhood, it's no surprise he has seemingly forged a deep connection with her character. Personally, I'd absolutely love another surreal adventure into the darkness of Alice's mind, even if to simply revel in its stylish gothic universe once again. Wonderland serves as escapism for Alice just as it does for the player. And now for a word from today's sponsor, Bai. I've used Bai in the past a few times now, from Death Stranding merch to Japanese games. With Bai, you're able to buy anything from Japan, from Japanese auction sites to Amazon Japan with support for several different languages. Bai orders or bids on items on your behalf, which is then shipped to their warehouse and from there to you. My most recent pickup is Shadow Tower Abyss, one of From Software's PlayStation 2 games, and I got it considerably cheaper from Bai than I would have on UK sites. I also purchased some PSP games that feature the Sony mascot Toru Inoue, which again were a bargain compared to trying to buy them from UK sellers. For those of you looking for Japanese games and collectibles, I advise searching both the English and Japanese names for them, as it will show more results. My wishlist is ever growing, and I have quite a few more games that I'll be buying from there over time. I hope to complete my PS2 survival horror collection eventually, and Bai makes that a lot easier to achieve. If you're interested, you can use the link in the description to get 2,000 yen off your first purchase. In addition to this, from October 6th to the 26th, there's 2 other discounts available for first-time Mercari users. This includes a 3,000 yen off international shipping fee that can be stacked with the 2,000 yen coupon. And there's also 1,000 yen off product price that can also be used the following month. Thanks again to Bai for sponsoring this channel. I also want to give a huge thanks to my patrons for making all of this possible. Because of them, I can invest in better equipment, and commission others for things like voiceover mixing and other stuff that helps improve my videos. Thank you all for watching this video, and I hope to see you soon with another.